Alright, welcome to MTG Life, everyone. We're back for our very first Commander deck tech, so I hope you guys enjoy. The first Commander deck tech we will be doing will be Tatyova, Benthic Druid. Now, I don't know if you can see that because of the glare. There we go. She is a not red, sorry, my mind's on a different card right now. Green, blue, 3 generic mana for a Merfolk Druid. She's a 3/3 with whenever a land enters battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life and draw a card. Now, what you would be thinking we'd be doing in this kind of deck is that we're going to just try to drop lands very fast. We're going to do a little bit of that, but we're going to largely go on the side of card draw, because we're going to mainly want to get cards into our hand to play, because we will be putting out a few lands, quite a few lands, and we'll just need the card draw so that we can draw into creatures, spells, instant sorceries. We're running green-blue. I'm not really running counter spells in this kind of deck. I want to focus more on mana ramp, getting out our commander as fast as possible to gain that life and draw those cards, and to then just overwhelm our opponent with our creatures and just the card advantage we have. We do have some little tricks we have in here to keep ourselves from losing, and we have some big heavy hitters in here. Not as many as you would think. I kind of went with a bit more of a Merfolk tribal kind of deck here, although the very first legendary creature we will talk about in this deck is Multani, Yavi Maya's avatar. He is 2 green, 4 generic mana for a 0/0 elemental avatar with reach trample. He gets +1/+1 for each land you control and each land card in your graveyard. You can pay a green and 1 generic to return 2 lands you control to their owner's hand. Return them from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, he's really good in this kind of deck. He's good in any kind of deck that involves putting lands onto the field a lot. He has the reach and trample. He can block flyers. But if you get him out from if you just hard cast him with just the mana, he's a 6/6 when he comes into the battlefield. 7 if you just drew him and put a land onto the battlefield. So he's a good blocker against flyers, and he's a good heavy hitter with that trample you got going on. Not to mention, if he dies, just return 2 land, pay his ability, return 2 lands to your hand, bring them back, recast them, play one of those lands if you haven't played a turn, and then he just gets bigger. Yeah, you're going down 2 lands, but we're going to be playing lands a lot. Quite, maybe 2 or 3 a turn. Not as many as you would think, but still. And if you have Tatyova on the battlefield, you do this, and you don't have lands in your hand, you get Multani back, and you can then just play down a land, draw a card, gain a life. Now, this next card is our last legendary creature in this deck. I don't really put many legendary creatures in decks, but this one here I put into the deck mainly to play with its kicker cost. It is, and I'll tell you a little story because I played a game the other day and actually won with this card. Never thought I would. It's Slin Vada, the Rising Deep. Yes, you see that correct. He's 2 blue, 6 generic mana. That's already 8 mana right there for an 8/8 with no other ability for a Leviathan like that. That's if you don't pay his kicker cost. You can pay another blue and 1 generic for a total of 10 mana, because you have to pay his casting cost for an 8/8 Leviathan. When he enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, return all creatures to their owner's hands except for Merfolk, Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Servants. It's another reason why I went a little bit more of a Merfolk tribal deck here. I just realized I should probably put in my Kiora, the Crashing Wave, for her 9/9 Kraken's emblem, but I'll have to remember to do that. But I honestly only put this card in this deck to play it with its kicker cost, because I figured if I draw it late game, I can use it as kind of a board wipe. Now, I was playing against a friend, against a Suruk, the Dragon Claw. If you guys don't know, he's a blue, red, green, and 2 generic for 5 generic, 4 or 5 convert mana cost, 6/6 human warrior with flash. When he can't be countered, creatures you control can't be countered. Other creatures you control have trample. Now, I was losing. I had a board of good 7 or 8 Merfolk. The biggest one was like 3/3, 4/4. None of them were very big. I was taking it, and they had all their creatures. They had like a good 4 or 5 creatures with flying, unblockable. I couldn't block it except for one, and I was taking 25 damage basically a turn. And I figured it was game over. I drew into Slinbada, was able to last long enough to get the mana out for it, played it for 10 mana, and bounced their whole board, and they conceded immediately because of how much mana it would take just to build their board up. And by the time they would have, I would have just knocked them down and gotten them to a point where they couldn't do anything. Now, that's the only reason why that card's in this deck. And I'm kind of happy about that because everyone has that kind of card that they put into a deck that they don't expect to ever really end up using, but if they do, it's going to be a great win. It's going to be a great story to tell. Because, I mean, after that first hit, I was knocked down to like 15, 18 life somewhere. Drew into this, was able to bounce their whole board back, and then win through conceding because they didn't want to deal with that. It's really great when you put in a card that you don't ever expect to use, and then you end up getting to use it. It just makes for a good thing. Now we're going to go into our merfolk creatures first, because like I said, this is a bit more of a merfolk tribal. It kind of goes with the Slinbada. Yeah. Now the first, these are in no particular order. I'd like to say the first one we have in this commander deck is Tishana's Wayfinder. It's a green 2 generic mana for a 2/2 Merfolk Scout. When it enters battlefield, it explores. For those of you who don't know what Explore is, you reveal the top card of your library, put that card into your hand if it's a land, otherwise put a 1/1 counter on this creature, then put that card back, or put it into your graveyard. Now, we do this we're running a few Explore cards in here, largely so that if it is a land on top, we get the land, then we can play the land. It helps with our mana fixing, helps with land. Yes, it's 2 color, but sometimes you need more mana to play more stuff, and you need to get to that extra land, or you just haven't drawn into lands. Helps you fix those land drops you missed. Now, and if it's a creature, it just buffs Tishana's Wayfinder, or any other creature with Explore, and we can decide either to put it back if we want it, or we can just throw it into the graveyard in hopes of getting a land next turn, or a different creature, or whatever. It gives us options. Now, next card goes with the same thing, Merfolk Branchwalker. It's a 1 green, 1 generic mana for a Merfolk Scout, 2/1 when it enters battlefield, it explores. Exact same thing. It becomes a 3/2 if it's not a land. 3/2 if it's a land, we get the land. It just helps us get that going. It just helps us get it going. Now, next card we have in our Merfolk slots is, since it is a Merfolk tribal, you will want to play a Seafloor Oracle. It's 2 blue and 2 generic mana for a 2/3 Merfolk Wizard. Whenever a Merfolk you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Now we're mainly on the draw. Like I said, we're on the draw stuff. So we want this draw stuff to be able to get into what we need to play, get into our little tricks to just draw into whatever we need. You'll draw a lot of cards in this deck, and hopefully gain some life with Tatyova. Yeah, this Seafloor Oracle is not really going to be the kind of card you attack with. It's mainly going to just sit back there, be a good blocker to those lower creatures, and just draw you cards. Next card we have in here is Vineshaper Mystic. It is a green 2 generic mana for a Merfolk Shaman. It's a 1/3 when it enters battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on each of up to 2 target Merfolks you control. Since it's a Merfolk tribal, basically, it's just going to buff the rest of your Merfolks and just make them stronger. Buff your Tatyovas if you want to. Buff any other Merfolk you need. Just play it in. Do that. Honestly, when I was making this deck, I was going to do a bit more of a flash kind of mechanic, but I don't have the stuff for it, and I only use cards that I have to make decks because I don't find it fair to people if I'm putting in like a proxy of some super expensive card that they'll never be able to get their hands on, or that I'll never be able to get my hands on because of how expensive it is. So I only use cards that I have that are cheap, that are basically bulk. So, yeah. I don't even know why I went on that. Now, the next card we have in here is actually a card that I really like, that I want to make work. Enclave Cryptologist. It's 1 blue for a 0/1 Merfolk Wizard. It has the level up ability. For level up, you pay whatever you need for the mana, and you put a level up counter on it. Do it only as a sorcery. Normally, it can make the creature bigger, give it some new abilities, or whatever. So you pay a blue and 1 generic mana to level it up. Levels 1 through 2, it's still a 0/1. You tap, draw a card, then discard a card. So it comes into the battlefield. You can, if you got the mana, you can go ahead and level up so that you can draw, but you have to discard a card. And you have to pay that 4 mana to get it up to 2. 6 mana to get it up to level 3, which is its final level, which is just tap to draw a card. Now, okay, that's the name of the card. Now, I used to have this card, but I was dumb and younger, and a friend convinced me to trade it out. If I had it, it would definitely be in this deck. It is Cryptolith Right. It's a green and 1 generic for an enchantment. All creatures you control tap to add a forest or something. I can't remember what it is they tap to add, but they tap to add some kind of mana. And that would go really good with this. If you watch the Command Zone, when their game night episode, someone did a deck with that, and he was able to basically put this card out with Cryptolith Right and immediately put it in, like almost immediately get to that where he can draw. So if any of you guys have seen that, I don't want you thinking that I was just stealing that idea from that. So I'm letting y'all know that that's where I saw that from, and it was a really cool thing. And even if I haven't seen that, it would still be a good card to go in this deck because it would help with our mana ramp. Now the next card we have in here is Jade Guardian. It's a green and 3 generic mana for a 2/2 Merfolk Shaman. It has hexproof. When it enters battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on target Merfolk you control. Now, you can put the counter onto him if you need to. You probably want to put it onto another card, another Merfolk you have, and he's hexproof, so he's good to keep opponents from trying to mess with him and all that. Now, a really good card in this deck is Kiora's Follower, which is a green blue for a 2/2 Merfolk, tap to untap another target permanent. So if, say, you can buff a creature very much, chant it or whatever to make it very big and strong and powerful, attack with it with no fear of having, yeah, it doesn't have vigilance, but you can untap it and no fear of seal away or anything like that. Because if they try to play seal away on it, you can tap to immediately untap it and then seal away fizzles. Now, we play Shaper Apprentice, which is a blue 1 generic for a 2/1 Merfolk Wizard. It has flying as long as you control another Merfolk. We play it in here just because it's a cheap 2 damage creature that odds are when you play it, you're going to have another Merfolk, or you're going to get a Merfolk out the next turn. If you play it turn 2, odds are you're going to have another Merfolk turn 3, and then you can hit them in the air, hopefully unimpeded, and they won't do anything to mess with you. Now, the next card we have in here is Jungle Delver. It's a really good card in here. It's a green for a 1/1 Merfolk Wizard. Warrior, my bad. You pay a green and 3 generic mana to put a 1/1 counter on him. Now, this card can get really out of hand. Like I said, we're going to be putting some land down with instant sorceries and a few other creatures doing that, letting us put lands down other than our first land each turn. So you can easily ramp into him and take him from a 1/1 to a 5/5 quickly. Yeah, not in one turn. That'd be insane if you could. But in a few turns, he could get really out of hand, and he can become the kind of threat that your opponent's going to waste a kill spell on, or something else. Or you can just immediately try buffing him up with your other Merfolks that give 1/1 counters. Now, we do run a Mistcloaked Herald. It's a blue for a 1/1 Merfolk Warrior. He cannot be blocked. We run him in here for his unblockable, just so that we can have him deal that damage we need. He's a little 1-drop, get in some early hits. Now, we do play Shapers of Nature. It's a blue, a green, and 1 generic mana for a 3/3 Merfolk Shaman. You pay a green, 3 generic mana, put a 1/1 counter on target creature, pay a blue, 2 generic mana, remove a 1/1 counter from a creature you control, draw a card. So this here can pair really well with that Jungle Delver. The Jungle Delver can put mana, basically you pay the same amount of mana to put a 1/1 counter on Jungle Delver or another creature. Then later on, you can just pay 3 mana to remove a counter from something and then draw a card. Odds are you're only going to do that if you really need draw. You're not going to have to worry about emptying your hand out a lot here. You're going to have plenty of draw spells. The next Merfolk we run in here is a Water Trap Weaver. It's a blue, 2 generic mana for a 2/2 Merfolk Wizard. When it enters the battlefield, tap target creature and opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. We run it in here just because it helps us. Say they got a 7/7 on the board. That's all they have, so you don't want to attack in with your creatures because you don't want to lose one of them. So you just play this, tap it down, and get in those hits really quickly. And it gives you another turn or two to find another better answer to it. It just lets you prolong it so you can get to another answer. Now, next card we run in here is a Merfolk Wayfinder. It's a blue, 2 generic mana for a 1/2 Merfolk Scout. It has flying, so it has that. And when it enters the battlefield, reveal the top 3 cards of your library. Put all island cards revealed this way into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Best case scenario, all 3 are islands. Worst case, nothing's an island. It can give you land. That's why we run it in here. It has the chance to give you 3 islands. Most likely not, but still, there's always that chance. Jungleborn Pioneer. It's a green and 2 generic mana for a 2/2 Merfolk Scout. When it enters battlefield, create a 1/1 blue Merfolk creature token with hexproof. I'm a little thirsty. It's basically 3 mana for 3 power on the board, with one of those having hexproof. It just creates a few blockers if you need blockers or whatever. The next card we run is Headwater Sentries. It's a blue, 3 generic mana for a 2/5 Merfolk Warrior. He's in here largely just so that we can use him as a blocker. That 5 toughness is really good for blocking creatures. For 4 mana, it's decent enough to run it in here as one of our Merfolks. Yeah, that's basically it on it. You can eventually just buff it with 1/1 counters on it if you want it to. Make it a 3/6, 4/7, so on, so on, so on. Find a way to give it vigilance or to keep it from tapping. Swing in and not have to worry about it being killed because of its high toughness. Now, like I said, I was wanting to play some flash mechanics, so I did throw in 1 or 2, maybe 3 cards that actually have flash in here. One of these is Windstrider, which is a blue and 4 generic mana. It's a Merfolk Wizard, my bad, for a 3/3 flash flying. We run him in here because, like I said, it's blue. I don't really care much about doing the counter spells, but I did want to do some kind of weird, tricky stuff in here. So I was wanting to do some flash stuff. I may actually switch in some more flash cards, and you guys can feel free to completely do that. This is just a template for you guys to use. It's how I make a budget, basically, commander like this. Yeah, it's got flash, so your opponent attacks in with maybe a flying creature that's a 1/1 2/2, and they're not expecting to do anything, and you haven't played any counter spells like you're halfway through the game and you haven't played any counter spells at all. So they're like, okay, he's got no kind of trick. The only tricks come from his creatures, and you haven't played anything with flash yet. So you play this in, you kill it, eat it, or if you just need a blocker, it gives you an extra turn. I mean, it could just get eaten by like a 7/7 or something like that, but it gives you a blocker. Now, next card we run in here is Umara Entangler. It's a blue and 1 generic mana for a Merfolk Rogue Ally. It's a 2/1 with prowess. If you don't know what prowess is, it's whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn. Now, the reason why we run this in here is we're going to run some instants and sorceries. So this card here, and like I said, we're going to have mana for days. We're going to do some mana ramp. So this here can easily become a 4/3 or a 5/4. It can easily become something like that in this kind of deck. Next card we have is Enclave Elite. It's a Merfolk Soldier. It's a blue and 2 generic mana for a 2/2. It does have multi-kicker. You pay a blue and 1 generic mana. You can pay this as many times as you want if you have the mana. And that's why we're running it, because it has Island Walk, and whenever it enters battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it for each time it was kicked. So you could possibly make it a 4/4, 5/5, whatever. It's mainly because, like I said, we're going to have mana ramp. We're going to have mana. And if you have nothing else to play, you can play this and just make it huge. Now the next card we run in here is Swift Warden. It's 2 green and 1 generic mana for a 3/3 with Flash. Like I said, Flash. It's a Merfolk Warrior, by the way. When it enters the battlefield, target Merfolk you control gains hexproof until end of turn. What I'm saying is tricks. They finally decide one of your creatures has become a threat. They try to use a kill spell, get rid of it, do something to it. And you just play Swift Warden, flash it in for 3 mana. It's a 3/3 as well. And it gives another creature, Merfolk you control, hexproof. What's not to like about it? It's got a little tricks to it. It does that little tricky thing we want to do. And it's green, so they're not expecting it. Storm Sculptor, it's a blue and 3 generic mana for a 3/2. It can't, Merfolk Wizard, it can't be blocked. When it enters the battlefield, return a creature you control to its owner's hand. We run this in here because it's 3 damage that can't be blocked, and it gives you a chance for another card like, say, Swift Warden to reflash it in later when you need it, or one of these other cards that does like gives another Merfolk you control 1/1 or something. It just gives you the chance to be able to replay another one of those abilities. Now we're done with our Merfolk stuff, so we're going to move into the other creatures we have within this deck. Now some of these are on the higher end because a lot of our Merfolk were on a bit more of a cheaper end, more in the 3 and 4 mana group. The rest of these are a little more in the higher mana, like Sphinx of Magosi. Yes, it is a common, super common, bulk rare, basically in every single deck builder's toolkit. 3 blue, 3 generic mana for a 6/6 Sphinx with flying. You can pay a blue and 2 generic, draw a card, put a 1/1 counter on it. We run it in here because, like I said, we're going to have mana. We're going to be able to play this out, and it's a 6/6 flyer, and then we can just pay 3 mana if we don't have anything else to do to draw a card into something that we could do, or a land to play, and make it bigger. It's the kind of card that, yeah, it's not one of the best. It's a pretty generic card. It's a pretty common rare. It's basically everyone has it, but it's the kind of card that if you leave it on the board in a deck like this where we have the mana to do this, we will get card advantage, and this will become a giant flying creature that will become a threat. Now you can always use your cards as ways to control your opponent's actions like that. They may want to decide to use a kill spell on this instead of your commander, which actually what you want to do is keep your commander out so that you can continue to gain life and draw cards. Now the next card we play in here is Kraken of the Straits. It's 2 blue and 5 generic mana for a 6/6 Kraken. Creatures with power less than the number of islands you control can't block it. Now this here can possibly become unblockable, depending upon how early you get it out and how many islands you can get down. I mean, if you can get down 8 islands, odds are it's going to be unblockable by everything except for like Galta or Zakama or something like that. So if you can get out the islands, that's 6 damage that's unblockable, possibly. And it's also another creature that they may decide to just use a kill spell on it. Now we're getting like I said, these are in no particular order, but a few of my cards are in the mana ramp creatures. Like we do run Llanowar Elves, 1 green, 1/1 elf druid for tap, add a green. Play it turn 1, turn 2 you have 3 mana. You can generate plenty of mana with it. Same with Weaver of Currents. It's a blue-green 1 generic mana for a Naga Druid. It's a 2/2 with tap, add 2 colors to your mana pool. It's just extra mana. Yes, it's not any specific colored mana, but I mean, use it to pay for a kicker cost or something else. Elvish Mystic, same exact thing as Llanowar Elves. I mean, if you have a hand where you have a forest, some other green card, possibly an island, Elvish Mystic, and Llanowar Elves, you best keep that hand. Because, I mean, that's basically turn 1 forest, Elvish Mystic, turn 2 island, Llanowar Elves, and then possibly then another 2-drop creature if you have it. Then that's turn 3, that is 5 mana on the board turn 3. That's playing like your commander Tatyova or something like that. Now we run Garruk's Horde. Yes, this is another one of those cards like the Sphinx of Magosi. It's a 2 green, 5 generic mana for a 7/7 beast with trample. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You may cast the top card of your library if it's a creature card. This helps with those explore abilities. If you want to put in more explore into this kind of deck, I'd recommend playing this card because it lets you figure out if it's a creature, so you can decide whether or not you want to wait a turn to see if there's going to be a land if you need the land, or you can just go ahead and play it and buff your creature and decide to put it down and then flip the card. And then of course you can make cast top of your library if it's a creature card. What's not to like? You get option from your hand and from the top of your library if it's a creature. Nothing wrong with that at all. Now we also run Horizon Chimera. It's a blue-green 2 generic mana for a Chimera 3/2 flash flying trample. Whenever you draw a card, you gain a life. Now, like I said, we're going to be gaining we're going to be drawing a lot of cards with this deck. So having this out, if you can get it out early, preferably flash it in before you're going to draw a lot of cards. Well, if you're going to do that on an opponent's turn, or flash it in as a blocker, or just to attack. And yeah, play it right before you're going to draw a lot of cards so you can gain the life. Every little bit of life helps in a commander game, as much as you may not think it. 1 life may not help, but it may be a life that 1 life that may save you from getting killed and give you an extra turn later on. Now we do play a Llanowar Scout. It's a green and 1 generic mana for an Elf Scout. It's a 1/3 tap. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. It just helps you drop those lands. This is one that you may not expect us to play in this kind of deck, but I put it in here mainly as for its abilities. It's a Fleet Feather Cockatrice. It's a blue-green 3 generic mana for a Cockatrice. It's a 3/3 with flash, flying, death touch. It has monstrosity 3, so for those of you who don't know, you can pay its monstrosity cost, which is blue-green 5 generic mana. If this isn't monstrous, put 3/1/1 counters on it, and it becomes monstrous. So it can become a 6/6 flying death touch. And I play it also for the flash because your opponent taps with their 7/7. Flash in your flying death touch 3/3. Kind of makes them a little mad and pisses them off because they weren't expecting anything like that to happen. Now here's another one of those cards that everyone has. Soul of the Harvest. It's 2 green, 4 generic mana for an elemental 6/6 with trample. Whenever a non-token creature enters battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. We're going to be drawing cards. This is just another draw engine, and we're going to have mana to play our creatures and all that. So, and he's a 6/6 with trample. He's a body. He's a big body. Now, we're not running anything in our graveyards, but a lot of other people run like Muldrotha or Sidisi, something that involves their graveyards. Something that they need stuff in their graveyards to do what they want, whether it's flashback stuff. I can't remember the rest of the stuff, but this is a really good card to use, and it's Dryad Militant. You can pay either a green or a white. We're going to pay just a green for a 2/1. That's a 1-drop 2/1. Not bad at all. I mean, that's turn 2 damage, or more if you can buff it. I mean, Titanic Growth, that's 6 damage turn 2. For a Dryad Soldier, if an instant or sorcery card would put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. Yes, we do run a lot of instant sorceries in this deck. Most people run a lot of instant sorceries in their deck. We're not going to do anything to get them back, though. So this kind of card, turn 1, keep it alive for most of the game, will really screw up some decks, especially if you're playing like a wizard deck that wants them to play spells and has stuff to use them from the graveyard. It'll just mess up a lot of that graveyard recursion stuff. It'll really mess up stuff where it's like, for however many cards are in a graveyard, this does whatever. It can mess that up because it denies them those instants and sorcery cards in their graveyard, which can possibly cut down whatever that does by half, and possibly save your butt in the game. Now the next card we run in here is Realm White. It's a blue for a 1/1 Benthic Wizard. It enters the battlefield, choose a basic land type. Lands you control are the chosen type in addition to their other types. Now, we run this in here because it's really good mana fixing. If, say, you're really heavy on blue and not that much on green at the moment, on lands you have on the field, and you need more green to play all the cards in your hand, play this with the blue, and then choose green. Then you have a lot of blue, and then also now a lot of green out of nowhere. Same for if you need more blue. Say you only have 1 blue on the battlefield, but you have 5 green, and you need more. Play this, choose blue. Then you got 5 extra mana that turn to use for blue cards. It really helps with mana fixing, and it's just a 1-drop 1/1 that fixes your mana really well. This card here, I may actually switch out for Kiora. It's mainly in here just to mess with your opponent. Screw it. It's just in here just to be in here. It's Selhoff Occultist. It's a blue 2 generic mana for a human rogue 2/3. When it or another creature dies, target player puts the top card of his or her library into his or her graveyard. It's just in here to screw with your opponent, really. We have some pretty low drop creatures, and then when we get out our bigger stuff, they're big. So some creatures are going to die. Your opponents may decide to use kill spells on a lot of your stuff. So if you play this and they don't mess with this, you can mill out your opponent a few spells. It's just there to be there. Just there to screw with your opponent, because it's like, hey, look at this deck. It's Merfolk. Play this, and it's like, oh, now they're running some kind of weird mill. It's just in there to be in there, and I may switch out for Kiora, the Crashing Wave, for her Kraken emblem. That's the only reason why it's really in here. Not much point to it. Nimbus Swimmer is the next card we have in here. It's a blue-green for X for a Leviathan 0/0 with flying. It enters battlefield with X/1/1 counters on it. You can, if you have the mana, you can buff this, or if, say, you just want to do a little chump blocker, you can just make it into 1/1 and use the rest of your mana on something else if you need the body, or you can just buff it up. Now we're getting a bit more into cards that involve landfall, because like I said, we will be putting out maybe a few extra cards a turn. Retreat to Coral Helm. It's a blue 2 generic mana for an enchantment. I really like this card because it has landfall whenever landing is battlefield under control. Choose 1. You may tap or untap target creature, or scry 1. It works well in this deck. You can tap an opponent's creature if it's bothering you, or if you just need to attack and it's not letting you. Or you can untap one of your creatures. So you could wait after you've attacked and then untap one of your big creatures. And the scry 1, that you look at the top card, helps you decide whether or not to use an explore card or whatever. helps you helps you decide what you get next if you're just going to leave it there and then wait till your next turn to draw. Now the next card is Mysteries of the Deep. It's a blue for generic mana for an instant. Draw 2 cards. If a land enters the battlefield this turn, you draw 3 cards. Yeah, it's 5 mana, but it's mainly in here because you're gonna end up putting down a land. It's gonna give you 3 cards. And if you guys want, by the way, if you guys want, since this is very draw heavy, if you guys want to take out some of these cards, if you guys want to make this deck and put in stuff that involves like something happens when you draw a card, feel free to do that. Like I said, this is just basically a template. It's how I make a deck. It's fun. It's not like it's some super competitive to go play in a tournament deck. It's just a cheap tabletop deck that you can probably have the cards to make this kind of deck with anywhere. It's super simple and easy. Feel free to do whatever you guys want. Now the next card we have in this deck is Spore Mound. It's 2 green, 3 generic mana for a 3/3 fungus. Whenever land enters battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 green sapling creature token. It's just in here to create bodies. It's in here to, you have this and Tatyova out. You draw a card, gain a life, and get a 1/1 creature if you put down land. It's just in here to just do that. Now, here's a card that everyone loves, but they hate to play against. Blossoming Defense. It's a green for an instant. Target creature gets +2/+2 and gains hexproof. Everyone hates it because it's basically a 1-drop hexproof. Well, it is a 1-drop hexproof that buffs. So if your opponent attacks and that you block with something, that's odds are they're going to trade and they buff and they decide to just kill yours, you can just buff yours lives and gains hexproof. Now, we do have our own buff spell in here as well. Ferocious Charge. It's a green and 2 generic mana for an instant. Target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. And you scry 2. We run this in here because it buffs a creature, buff Tatyova, make her 7/7, and then scry 2. Like I said, with scry, helps you mana fix, helps you decide what you want on top, and it gives you the option of 2 cards this time. Now, odds are you're going to have the Sin, so you may want to hold this card until you get the City's Blessing and do your Great Ascension with your 10 permanents. And that's Secrets of the Golden City. It's 2 blue and 1 generic mana for an instant. Ascend. If you control 10 or more permanents, you get the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. I really do like that Ascend mechanic, though. I wish they would have done more cards with it, because it's really great. I wish they would have done something else with the City's Blessing, like maybe do something like if you had this like for like the little card you get with the City's Blessing, because you know there's like a little kind of token card thing for that. If I wish the City's Blessing was like at the beginning of your upkeep, tap target creature, or at beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you untap a creature or something like that. I wish they would have done something like that, like the Monarch ability, like at the beginning of your end step you draw a card if you're the Monarch. I wish they would have done something like that and still done that, but I guess that would have been a little overpowered with these other cards getting their boosts from these Ascends. Anyways, you draw 2 cards. If you had City's Blessing, draw 3 cards. Yeah. Now, remember that little 2-drop 2/1 with Prowess we were playing earlier? It goes well with this card. Reach Through the Mist. Pay a blue for an instant and draw a card. Yeah, it does say Arcane. That's because it's from the Kamigawa block. That's a whole different thing. Anyways, it's a 1-drop draw card, people. Not to mention, if you play some Prowess stuff, I mean, this is the kind of card I recommend in any kind of blue deck, especially if you're running Prowess or a Wizards deck. Odds are you're going to run some Prowess in a Wizards deck. I really recommend this in any kind of deck like that, because it's a 1-drop. You draw a card, so that's a 1-drop. You get a little card advantage, and it buffs creatures' prowess, or it does something with your Wizards that does something whenever you cast an instant or sorcery or whatever. Beneath the Sands, you don't really need it. It's a green 2 generic mana for sorcery. Search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle your library. Cycling 2, pay 2 generic, discard this card, draw a card. It's mainly in here for if you need that one other green or blue or whatever, you can go get it. Or if you need to draw something, it just lets you draw. Now, like I said, we do have some cards in here that do some little tricks, like Blinding Fog. It's a green 2 generic mana for an instant. Prevent all damage that will be dealt to creatures this turn. Creatures you control gain hexproof until end turn. Your opponent tries to do something that kills off all your creatures with, like, say, like, I don't know. They try to do something that kills them. Play this. They gain hexproof. They just wasted mana on a remove a spell or something like that. And then you can block, so there's no point in them attacking you. So they may just go attack a different opponent. Now, for some graveyard hate again, we have Groundstill in here. It's a green 1 generic mana for an enchantment. When it enters battlefield, draw a card. Cards in graveyards can't be the target of spells or abilities. It's just another graveyard hate. A lot of people are running that Muldrotha deck or Sidisi or something like that. They're just doing something with graveyard shenanigans. So it's just an extra thing to say, screw you. You're not going to get your deck working right now. You're going to have to go through an extra hoop by taking out this enchantment to get to it. Now the next card we run here is Serpent's Gift. It's a green 2 generic mana for an instant. Target creature you gains death touch till end of turn. It's just another combat trick. Your opponent attacks with a 7/7. You block with a 1/1. You play this. Your 1/1 just killed a 7/7. It's just something to screw with them, make them a little more hesitant. Because once they realize you're not playing blue combat, like weird combat stuff, to mess with them, they're going to feel free to attack. So when they see you are tapped out on blue, but you still got 3 or 4 green mana, this makes them a little more hesitant, like with the Blossoming Defense or the Serpent's Gift. It just makes them hesitant to attack, especially because they're more worried about your blue, so they may forget that you may possibly have something like Serpent's Gift or something like that. So they decide to attack because you're tapped out on blue, but you still got green mana. Then you play this, and it's like, ha, now you gotta worry about me being tapped out on green too, motherfucker. Sorry if anyone took offense to that. Get a little more chatty, and I enjoy talking about the cards and all that. Now, this is kind of like a blue version of Settle the Wreckage, but it's not. It's Aetherize. It's a green 3 generic mana for an instant. Return all attacking creatures to their owner's hand. 4 mana. Instant. All attacking creatures to their owner's hand. So if your opponent's playing tokens, they have a board of like 100 little 1/1 tokens and they attack you, just Aetherize them, return them, and since they're tokens, they disappear and you just ruin their entire game. Or they just have a board full of giant creatures. Return them. Now, Enter the Unknown. It's a green for a sorcery. Target creature you control explores. You may play an additional land this turn. It lets you play an additional land, lets you explore. Possibly get that land you need, or creature you control gets buffed. Either way. Now, next instant we have here is an Arbor Armament. I feel like I just said that weird. It's early, people. It's a 1 green for an instant. You put a 1/1 counter on target creature. That creature gains reach until end of turn. Buffs a creature, gives it reach. Your opponent attacks with flying, not expecting you to have anything to block. Here's a little trick. You buff your creature, and you block it. Possibly kill it. Vision Skeins. It's a blue 1-drop. It's a blue 1 generic mana for an instant. Each player draws 2 cards. Yes, you're making your opponents draw 2 cards as well, but it's you draw 2 cards also, and it's for 2 mana. Now, you could possibly have something for whenever you draw cards, something happens, whatever. It can help with that. Or if your opponents draw cards, play this card in a Nekusar. Whenever an opponent draws a card, deals a damage to them. I think that's what that does. I can't remember. Or with Niv Mizzet, whenever you draw a card, deal a damage to something, or something like that. Yes, they're drawing cards, but it's 2 mana to draw 2 cards. It's a mana cheaper than Divination that makes just you draw 2 cards. If you want to switch this out for Divination, feel free. But this is the kind of card that kind of makes your friends... If you play early game, your friends may think you're kind of playing a group hug deck, where you're kind of helping everyone else out, and they may leave you alone for a little bit, hoping that you'll do something that can help them. And you could play stuff like Serpent's Gift on your opponent's creatures to give it Death Touch to screw with someone else. And technically they're mad at them because it just killed their creature, not you. You can make people think you're the good person. Make them think that, hey, I should keep this person alive till the end. And then you come out and you play Slin Vada, bounce their boards after like this one guy's killed the other two people, and it's just you and him, and he's turned his head towards you, and you play Slin Vada, bounce his whole board and wreck him because he's so low in life. Now, next card we have is Dive Down. It's 1 blue for an instant. Target creature gets +0/+3 and gains hexproof. It's another thing you can do during combat. If they try to remove one of your creatures, play this. It has hexproof, can't be removed. And it becomes a good blocker. I mean, play it on those Headwater Sentries or whatever they were. Swiftwater Sentries, I think they were. The 2/5s. It's just become a 2/8. They attack with a 7/7. You just block their 2/8. They can't remove it. So, now, since it is a Merfolk Tribal, we are playing a Crashing Tide, which is blue and 2 generic mana for a sorcery. Crashing Tide, you can play it. It has flash as long as you control Merfolk. Turn target creature to its owner's hand, draw a card. Odds are you're going to have a Merfolk out. You're going to be able to play it with a flash. I like flash in a green-blue deck like this. It just keeps your opponents guessing. If I had a Vidalcan Orrery, I'd be playing that in here, but no. That thing's super expensive, and they won't reprint it anytime soon, probably. So, yeah. And it gives you an extra card after returning target creature to its owner's hand. It doesn't have to be an opponent's. It can be yours. Like, you can block with a creature, and then before the damage is dealt, like, before, like, blocking has been decided, the way combat works is that you block, and then you go to damage. Then your creature will deal the damage, and then you can play this, return it to your hand, and it still lives. It's like with Sakura Tribe Elder. It's a green 1 generic for a Snake Shaman 1/1. You can sacrifice it to search your library for a basic land card, put it into the battlefield tapped, or into your hand or something like that. But what it is, with that card, you can block a creature, and then before it dies from damage, you can sack it and search your library. I'm pretty sure this works. If I'm not, let me know. I'm pretty sure that this works like that kind of, though. Okay, so you guys remember Garruk's Horde from earlier. Now here's a card that will pair very well with him. It's Courser of Crucifix, which is 2 green, 1 generic mana. Who likes my shiny, the shooting star symbol? Oh, so shiny foil. And 1 generic mana for a 2/4 enchantment creature, Centaur. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play the top card of your library if it's a land. Whenever a land enters battlefield under your control, you gain a life. Now, if you have Garruk's Horde out and Courser of Crucifix, you can play cards from the top of your library, whether it's a land or a creature. So then, if, say, you have 10 lands in a row, you just play them all out, and they don't come into play tapped. And then, odds are you have the mana to play whatever card's on top. There you go, and you've been gaining life this whole time from the lands. Everything, or if there's a creature on top and you've scryed and you know there's a land, you can play the creature on top, play the land then, and then whatever's on bottom, hopefully you'll have mana to play if it's a creature or something. The only things you can't play now from the top of your library is instances of sorceries. You could easily throw in a Precognition Field. I think it's the enchantment. It's 4 mana. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You can play instants and sorceries from the top of your library. I think that's it. I'll have to check into that. But, I mean, if you have all 3 of those cards on the field, you can play everything from the top of your library. You don't need a hand anymore, because your library has become your hand. I mean, so long as you have the mana to play stuff on top, you can continuously go in. Now, of course, what kind of deck like this would not be a good deck without Animus Awakening? So it's a green and X for a sorcery. You reveal the top card, X cards of your library, put all land cards from among them onto the battlefield tapped, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Spell Mastery. If there are 2 or more instants and or sorceries in your graveyard, untap those lands. If you have the mana, you could possibly go through and possibly get 10 lands. I've seen people who've done this and who were mana ramping so much that they actually had enough mana to get 10 lands from their deck and have them untapped. And they had like 15, 18 mana available in lands, in just their lands. At that point, you might as well concede. Unless you're running something like what is it? I can't remember the name of it. It's I think it's a white card. You destroy all lands. Yeah. Aquatic Incursion. It's a blue and 3 generic mana for an enchantment. Whenever it enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 blue merfolk creature tokens with hexproof. Pay 4. Target merfolk can't be blocked this turn. Like I said, we have a lot of merfolks. Just getting this down and paying 4 to make, like, say, your commander and buffing her unblockable. You can possibly take someone out with just commander damage like that. Or you could attack with some other merfolk. Yeah, all our merfolks are kind of pretty weak, but it's still unblockable damage. And damage does add up over time. Especially if you're not the only one attacking that person. Now, next instant we play in here is Gridlock. It's a blue and X for an instant. Tap X non-land permanents. I mean, if you want to attack and your opponent has like 5 creatures on the field and you have 6 mana available, you can tap them all out and deal damage. Or if your opponent has just played a board and they're trying to keep you from dealing fatal damage, play this, they're tapped out. If they're tapped out in mana and all their creatures are tapped, deal that damage and win. Alright, so the next card we play in here is Unnatural Predation. It's a green for an instant. Target creature gets +1/+1 and gains trample until end of turn. We play it in here just to buff some of our bigger creatures, that 1 extra counter, and then it gives it trample. Like Garruk's Horde is a 7/7, it becomes an 8/8 with trample. Or Multani, who could possibly be a 10/10, and then gets that +1/+1 and can do 11 damage with trample. Now, we are running a pretty merfolk heavy deck, so odds are you're going to have more than 3 or 4 merfolk on the battlefield. So we do run Distant Melody. It's a green and 3 generic mana for a sorcery. Choose a creature type. Merfolk, obviously. Draw a card of each permanent you control of that type. It's really good. I also recommend it in Tribal Wizards or something like that. Anything with blue that you can do a tribal with. I always recommend this kind of card in there because who knows how much it can draw you. Even if you're doing like blue-white, cats, soldiers, or tokens or something like that. No telling what it could draw you. Now, I do run a Favor of Overbearing in here. It's a 1 generic and you can pay either a green or blue for enchantment or enchant creature. As long as it is green, enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has vigilance. As long as enchanted creature is blue, it gets +1/+1 and has flying. So play that on Tatyova. She gets +2/+2, has vigilance and flying. So she's now 5/5 vigilance flying. Commander. Not bad. I once equipped her with that card and this card and it went insane. I equipped her with 6th Sense as well. 1 green for enchantment or enchant creature. Enchant creature has whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. So with that flying, it's most people aren't going to run something that's going to be like, you may encounter a plummet or something that's going to attack a creature you control with flying and deal damage to it or kill it. Most people aren't running reach or flying or something like that, so you kind of have some good evasion going on here. So odds are you play that along with the Favor of Overbearing on something, give it vigilance flying +2/+2, and whenever it deals damage to a player, you draw a card. You're getting a lot of advantage because you're dealing a lot of damage. Your creature's not tapping, they're not able to block it, and you're drawing a card. Equip it to your commander, you're dealing regular damage, commander damage, drawing a card, and your commander's not being tapped, so it can't be targeted by like Steal Away or something. So that's a really good combo there to do with those enchantments. Yes, they can be targeted by enchantment removal, but still, if you can get that off, it really works well together. Next enchantment we play is a Nihilist Presence. It's a green and 1 generic for enchantment or enchant land. When it enters battlefield, draw a card. Chant land is every basic land type in addition to its other types. This is the kind of card you would want to run more in other colored like 3 colored decks. I run it in here for mana, so just a little bit some mana fixing in that draw. It's cheap to do. Once it enters battlefield, it's basically in a 2 color deck. Once it enters battlefield, it's basically a 2-drop draw card. If your opponent tries to get rid of it, doesn't matter. Next card we play is Urban Evolution. It's a green, blue, 3 generic mana for a sorcery. Draw 3 cards. You may play an additional land this turn. You get 3 cards, and you play an additional land. What's not to like, people? I mean, come on. Yeah, it's sorcery speed. I kind of wish it'd be instant speed for 5 mana, but Thrive. It's a green X for an instant. Put X 1/1 counters on each of. Put a 1/1 counter on each of X target creatures. So if you have a full board, you can basically buff them all an extra 1/1. And it's sorcery. It's a sorcery, not an instant. My bad. Now we're almost done. We're getting to our lands. We don't have many non-basic lands. We run Terramorphic to mess with Tatyova. We also do run an Evolving Wilds. They do the exact same thing. Enters battlefield, so activates her ability then, and then you can tap, sack them, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto battlefield, tapped. Activates her ability again. So play that card with Tatyova on the field. You're getting you're getting 2 lands of whatever color you need, basic lands, which is going to be green or blue. Drawing 2 cards and then getting 2 life. It's not bad. We play Ghost Town for tap, add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool, and you can pay 0, return it to its owner's hand, use this ability only during another player's turn. So if you don't have cards, so if you haven't drawn into lands and you have Tatyova or you're wanting to play lands and you have this on the field, you can just return it to your hand on an opponent's turn, like right on their end step, play it, especially if you didn't draw a land that turn, and then it activates Tatyova's ability, and then continuously keep doing that. It's a continuous thing, and I think you may be able to do that while it's in the graveyard, maybe. I have to check the ruling on that. It may be a possible graveyard thing. I don't know. We do play Woodland Stream, and there's battlefield tap for a green or blue. Just some mana fixing. Evolving Wilds, like I said. We do run a Simic Guildgate in here, and there's battlefield tap green, blue. You guys could probably even take out this stuff and just go with more generic land or something else. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We run 15 basic forests. And 15 basic islands. Alright. That's my Tatyova Benthic Druid Commander deck tech, people. This here's the first deck tech I've done. I'm proud of it. Didn't go over an hour. It's probably a little long for a deck tech. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please click the like button, subscribe. Leave a comment, please. Just leave a comment. Tell me what you thought. Tell me anything I can fix and do. And if you've made it to this point, thank you for just watching. Let me know if there's anything I can do to fix this. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't like. And just comment. Let me know, please. If you didn't like it, tell me what you didn't like. If you liked it, let me know. Thank you for watching. I'll have more videos out, and hopefully eventually I'll figure out how to put the cards on the actual screen so you can read them better and do some little stuff. I'm still trying to learn that stuff. So please enjoy. Thank you for watching, and have a good day. Peace out.